so, Greg, welcome to Coffee Conversations again.
Welcome back.
Yeah,
Yes.
welcome back. You were actually my very first guest on Coffee Conversations, and so I'm really excited to welcome you back and to hear all kinds of updates. And let's remind everyone that you're with Neilsen Consultants, Neilsen Training and Consultants. Is that correct?
Neilsen Training and Consulting. You got it.
Yeah, and we do some training together, so I know what a big star you are, and so we're really excited to have you here on Coffee Conversations. But you came today to talk to us about mergers and acquisitions,
I did.
and this is something that you advise clients on merger processes and that sort of thing?
I do. My background is as a lawyer. So just like you, Jenny, we've been through the grind of law school, have been through the theoretical on mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
And it does tend to come up a lot among our nonprofit clients, asking about collaborations that eventually lead to, merger discussions or acquisition discussions. And so I love those conversations because it's a creative way to think about how we're doing our work, how nonprofit organizations are arranging themselves in the ecosystem.
Yeah, well, and for nonprofits, so vitally important that they partner at a very, I mean, in the private sector, we want that as well, but in nonprofit, you really can't exist without community and those really high level collaborations. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and then right now we're looking at some real issues, kind of a mission panic among many of our organizations who are having to change course or strategize differently because they don't have the numbers of people they need, employee wise, whatever the case may be. Many of them are a bit in chaos, and that lends itself to actual opportunities in regards to partnerships, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think when we're talking about mergers, the temptation is to think of it only as a crisis
Yeah.
strategy or only something that we're going to talk about if we are running low on resources or we think we don't have a viable or sustainable path forward. In reality, a lot of the organizations that I talk to, just like you, are looking at it as a growth strategy or are looking at it as a way to enhance their mission impact. Perhaps we are doing a really great job in this geographic area, but we have an opportunity to expand our impact over to an underserved area of the community. The last year and a half has been kind of crazy and a really rocky landscape for all nonprofits. But one of the things that it's forced all of us to do is to re-examine our business models and re-examine how we're getting the work done, with whom we're getting the work done, and are there other more creative or more efficient ways that we can increase our impact?
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely think it has opened the doors for those conversations. Talk to me a little bit about how do we or how do our executive directors that we advise, how do we recommend to them that they start those conversations within the board space? How do we start having our board talk about merger and acquisition or any level of sustained collaboration within those board spaces?
I think that, and I'm going to start with the high level before we get to the practical.
Okay.
At a high level, it's really important for executives and leaders to start those conversations from a place of their organization's core values
Okay.
and their strategic plan. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we entering into a conversation, or why am I bringing this up to the board that we need to look at a merger or an acquisition? I'm doing it because there's something about our values that compels us to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
something about our strategic plan that we are trying to accomplish that requires us to examine our collaborations or move into a different space, right? So if I just spring it on my board and say, hey, board, at this month's meeting, we're going to talk about potentially merging with another organization, I will have two different reactions. Half of my board will be completely freaked out. The other half will think that I have completely burned out or lost my mind. Right. So these conversations have to be rooted in something that they can grab hold of. It's
Mm-hmm.
something about our values, something about our strategy that's implicated in the needs of the time that
Mm-hmm.
requires us to look at this alternative.
Yes. Yes.
That then gives
Okay.
board members a context or a frame to put around the conversation.
Okay, so maybe bringing it to the table when you're doing your strategic plan report and update of how you're doing
Absolutely.
and the ideas that you have in regards to. Like we said we were going to increase our client base by X amount, but we haven't done that. And some strategies possibly to do that would be to partner, which would be to have some sort of collaboration with X organization.
Absolutely. So I said I'd get to the
Yeah.
really practical way to have that conversation with the board is board members. One of our core values as an organization is inclusion, right? And do
Mm-hmm.
you remember when we prepared our strategic plan, one of the core strategies in the plan is to diversify and expand the clients that we're able to serve in marginalized or underserved communities. When we
Mm-hmm.
look at our value of inclusion and the strategy that we're trying to accomplish, I really want to have a conversation with you tonight about, are there specific collaborations or new ways that can help us achieve that goal that's consistent with our core values? That's
Yes.
a
Yes.
really practical way to introduce that to the board and invite their participation in a way that's not going to freak them out.
Great. Yes, I love that. And you could actually tag this into kind of this is, isn't it better than these terrible reports that come out at board meetings where it's just everybody's
Yes.
droning on and on. But to have that kind of conversation at a board
Yes.
meeting,
Absolutely.
awesome. And so it actually might be an easy way to change your structure of your board meeting fairly quickly if you already believe they're not very effective.
Without
Um,
a doubt. So I love the dynamic board meeting. I think that if
mhm.
you are going to bring talented, passionate, engaged people into a room to take an hour or 2 hours of their time for a board meeting, man, you got to leverage their talent and invite them to participate, invite them to help co-create solutions with you and your team to real challenges that you're having in that month.
Yes. Oh, dynamic board meeting. I like that a lot.
Yes.
That's a very that's a good phrase of how to put it because boards are people are tired of going to meetings. Now it's
Yes.
all meetings virtual, but it's still meetings and it's
Yes.
exhausting. So it makes perfect sense to change it into something that moves and flows and feels good and has power. Um, so when we are talking about strategies for addressing particular orientation with your vision and your strategic plan. What are some of the both, I guess, high level and low level sustained collaborations that can be considered even outside of merger and acquisitions?
Yeah, I think you need to go into it with an open mind and say, we're going to let the strategy drive what the ultimate result is, rather
Mm-hmm.
than going in with the result in mind, right? So
Yes,
sometimes
good.
we think merger is going to be the answer, but it's important to keep that open mind because maybe it's not. Maybe it is, maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not. We have to keep ourselves open to, for example, is a shared space arrangement going to be more effective than changing our legal structure through a merger? Some
Mm-hmm.
sort of staff sharing arrangement. So if we were to
Yeah.
somehow combine our staffs or collectively share an additional staff member, particularly now when hiring and staff retention has never been more challenging than it is right now. Those are the types of things that we can think about when we're open-minded, because that invites then board members to suggest those alternatives and say, you know what, merger is going to take us 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. But if we were to pursue a joint program with this organization as a pilot, would that be a way for us to get to know one another better and explore whether that even makes sense to deepen the relationship?
Yes, yes. I think I recently said to a client, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So just
Yes.
because we don't want to bring this conversation to the table that seems like such a strong, powerful, maybe they will start dodging us if we bring it up topic, we can actually just have conversations about variety of ways to partner, and we may get to that conversation eventually. That
And
is
this is
merger.
something that's natural for us in our personal lives, right? We do this all
Right.
the time. We all have
Right.
those friends that are like, okay, this is my friend that I go to baseball games with. And you know
Right.
what? We don't go to museums together because we work really well at a baseball game together, but not
True.
so well at a museum together. We
True.
do it in our personal relationships. What we're talking about is transitioning that to the professional world as well. So for our nonprofit, nonprofit A, we work really well with this organization when it comes to running joint programming. But
Mhm.
when we try to fundraise together, or when we try to share staff together or share space together, we bump into some
Uh-huh.
roadblocks and obstacles that make it not the best path forward for
Good
us.
point.
So again, it's
Yeah.
about keeping that open mind and seeing where do we slot best with this organization that has opportunity
Mhm.
to advance our strategy.
Oh, I really like that because that actually gives some flexibility in the culture arena, because cultures of organizations, in
Yes,
my view, have been probably the most problematic when you start partnership. It just really, everyone coming from a very different place. But what you're suggesting is that that actually could work in some areas, even if you have a culture difference. It could
absolutely.
work anyway.
Absolutely. So again, it's about knowing how you work best with your partner, right? So
Okay.
as an organization, how do you work best with your partner? So for example, I used to be the CEO of pediatric healthcare
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit. We had a collaborative partner in the community where we would refer children back and forth to each other because it broadened the array of services that they were able to receive. And we communicated really well about that, and it resulted in good outcomes for the kids that we both served. That was the way we worked best together. If we tried to merge our two organizations, the manner in which we provided services, the culture of our staffs, our teams, the way we recognized accomplishment, the way we handled communication, we would have bumped into
Very
some
good.
really
Uh-huh.
difficult rocky patches. And so we
Right.
understood these are the lanes that we each do really well, and how can we come together just enough that we can enhance the impact we have for kids but not bump into some of those
Yes.
more tricky, more thorny issues that are just not likely to be resolved easily.
Oh, I love that. I wish we could call all of what you just said and we use that terminology and that paragraph and replace the words merger and acquisition, because everyone fears and runs from merger and acquisition. I mean, in the recent one that I was involved with, they wanted to call it mergers and alliances, and I was like, not really.
Yeah.
But it's just like the word, they didn't like it. It was icky. So we need that paragraph you just said.
It's a corporate, it's a very corporate word, and so there it does
Nonprofit.
tend to have, visceral reactions when you bring up merger. But again, it goes to that point that you and I have talked about so many times, that merger is a tool to accomplish a strategy. It is not the strategic goal in and of itself,
Yes.
right? I always worry when I talk to an organization, they say we have a strategy to merge our organization with another, because it
Yeah.
begs the question, why?
Why?
So that,
Why?
what are you
Why?
trying to accomplish? How does that make the community and those that you partner with and serve a better place?
Yeah. And it's starting backwards, which
Hmm.
can be done. I mean,
Hmm.
you can do that. You can say, well, the why is because we're going to serve our clientele better.
Right,
And so you can, but it's not ideal because the why may not be the
right.
answer that you need it to be. So if you're looking at it from that kind of that strategy, um, about when you start those initial, like the partner you described with in your previous
Hmm.
CEO position, um, when you initially built that relationship and started having that collaboration, tell me just briefly what that looked like when you started having that. Was it at the staff level? Did you handle it? Was it board? And how did you come to that place where you felt comfortable in having that really high level collaboration?
See, we had a really collaborative organization, a really collaborative staff and team with
It's
open
what you lived by.
communication. It's what I was comfortable with as a
Uh-huh.
leader, and it was the culture of the organization that we built together
I
as a
like that.
team.
Yeah.
And so the initial idea actually came from staff members
Okay.
saying, we have children that we are serving really well, but we don't have the ability, the capacity to meet all of the needs that they have. We're
Okay.
aware of this other program in another part of the community that's also serving many of the same kids. Many of these kids are going to both of our organizations already. Is there a way that we can enter into a relationship that's going to benefit our organization and also benefit the outcomes for the kids
Yeah.
that we serve? So for us, it actually started at the staff level and
Okay.
then became a conversation, CEO to CEO, open-minded of, you know, not beginning with the end in mind, but just
Yeah.
saying, if both of us have a shared goal of providing outstanding service to kids with special needs,
Yes.
how can we reimagine the way we work together in our orbit to advance that shared goal? right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it became a conversation. And a lot of times, if we're just talking about a programmatic collaboration, that's where the conversations are. They're between staff members, they're between
Yes. Right.
CEOs.
Right.
Once you get to that merger level, if you start to bring that word
True.
into it, that's when it's time to elevate those conversations and bring the board
True.
into the discussion.
And the board is hearing through your reporting and the staff reporting about
Absolutely.
this relationship has already exists. So they're not hearing the
Absolutely.
names for the first time once those discussions are being had. They've actually been part of the plan you've had all along is
Yes.
we want to increase services to this population and we're going to partner with X, Y, and Z. And so they know this well in advance.
Right.
Once you maybe on even a more practical level, once you get into these discussions, so let's scrap the low level collaborations. Let's talk about M&A. Once you're into the actual negotiations and discussing it, really uncomfortable space for a lot of executive directors. I mean, you can't even say the word and boards. So nonprofits are just we're like, oh, we don't want to say those things. And so, talk to me about who needs to be on the team that's having these negotiations, and who, external and internal. And then, what are really your big topics? What are your big themes? How does that start? Just how do we say this to each other?
So for my clients, most of, the first step for me is I advise them to form a merger committee.
Mm-hmm.
And my recommendation, they can compose it however makes the most sense for them. I think you're ideally looking for no more than 5 to 7 total
Mm-hmm.
individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for the CEO. We're looking for a couple of board members. And then I recommend that they include a couple of senior level staff members or
Mm-hmm.
program staff members as well.
Great. Okay.
This type of seismic change, if we're talking about a merger, dramatically and directly affects staff members. You don't want the rumor mill to be the way they're
Yeah.
getting information about these discussions. You want them to have a voice at the table. And also, practically speaking, they're going to ask questions in the process that I, as the CEO, wouldn't think of.
Think of
My board
yeah.
member to my left and my right wouldn't think of. It's a
Yep.
valuable perspective to have.
Yeah.
So the composition of the committee, I like a couple of board members, CEO, couple of staff members from each organization. That's our merger committee.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to what we're looking at, that's the vulnerable piece, right? That's where
Yeah.
each organization has to say, you know what, we're going in and we're not going to do our spring cleaning the day before we have these conversations. We're simply
Mm-hmm.
going to open our house on a regular Tuesday afternoon and
And we
invite
don't
you to
see it.
walk in, right? Come see the
Oh,
clothes on the
dirty laundry.
floor,
That's right.
the dust that we haven't cleaned up yet, the dirt, the vacuuming that we haven't done yet. We're looking at the things that you can see, feel, and touch. Your financials. What does your board look like? What does your staffing structure and hierarchy look like? But then also paying attention to the intangibles, sort of the things that we can't see. What is the culture like? What's the vibe I get when I walk down the halls of
Yeah.
this organization?
Yeah.
Do staff members seem happy?
Yeah.
Um, how does this organization make big decisions? Are they a slow, deliberative process, or are they a boom, we know it when we see it and we go do it? Pay attention to things that you can see and things that you can't see along the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so those are the things that when you're doing your due diligence, the committee's really going to be taking a look at and assessing. So let's say those look square. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
there's a few concerns, but they look square. And we're going to have to address some of the things, maybe
Hmm.
the board and some other
Always.
things into the negotiations at that next level. So do you need a lawyer on the team, like an external mergers lawyer? Do you need a CPA? Do you need an advisor like Greg? What does that look like, Greg?
I typically recommend organizations have an external consultant and or facilitator to
Mm-hmm.
guide the process.
Mm-hmm.
These are the steps we're going to follow. I'm going to help hold you accountable as a team and make sure that you're able to focus on the information rather than the process, right?
Yeah.
Let someone external manage the process for you so that you can manage the content and make good decisions
Yeah.
along the way. There will be a time and a place where you need to bring in a CPA into the discussion.
Mhm,
You may
mhm,
want to share the P&L, the balance sheet with a CPA. That's more of a one-off. There may
mhm,
be a time, or there will be a time if you're pursuing merger, where you need to bring a lawyer into the
mhm,
discussion because you're going
mhm,
to need to file some paperwork and you're going to need to change the legal
mhm.
and business structure of the organization. Those people don't need to be involved at
Okay.
every step of the
Mhm,
process, both from a cost standpoint and also from an
mhm,
efficiency standpoint.
mhm. So this facilitator, this external facilitator you're talking about, will then help guide the conversations for the negotiation. So what are some of the considerations? What are some of the big hot button topics that are going to come up in that room?
There's always going to be controversy at that point in the negotiation. You have to go in with your eyes wide open because we're talking about things like what is going to be the mission and vision of the new merged organization, right?
Mhm.
If I've been the CEO of my organization for a number of years and you've been the CEO or founder of your organization, guess what? There's an emotional attachment to my mission statement, my vision statement. We have to navigate that and say, are we simply taking or adopting one of the partners' mission statement, or are we creating a brand new one? Other issues we need to look at are leadership structure, right? We have two very successful CEOs in the room. There's only one Captain Jack Sparrow, right? The movie doesn't exist if there's two Jack Sparrows. There's
Right.
going to likely be one CEO that emerges in the merged organization. Who's that going to be? What's going to be the time frame? We have to negotiate that as well. If my organization is cash strapped and we need this to happen in 3 months, and your organization is flush with cash and you have 18 months or more to make this happen, we need to negotiate that, right?
Yeah.
Board
Yeah.
members, staff members. Will all of our staff members survive this merger, or are we going to need to reduce staff
Right.
or add staff in some other way? So that's where some of the trickier, thornier issues come. And that's why it's beneficial to have a facilitator like yourself, Jenny, to just help guide the process and ask the questions so that those in the room can focus on answering them and making good
Yes.
decisions and not worry about, are we falling behind, or are we
Yeah.
managing the steps in the process effectively? I think that's the benefit that someone like you can bring.
Yeah, it's in not getting bogged down in the individual issues, but coming to some amount of um, agreement as to what is the end? What does the end look
Absolutely.
like in that big heading? Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with me in regards to mergers and acquisitions? See how I whispered it?
Acquisition.
I'm practicing whispering those words because then my clients will be more open to it.
No,
Is
I
it
think
anything
I think
else?
it's been a great discussion. I think that it's a
Yeah,
healthy discussion for
I do
nonprofits
too.
to have, even if it's not one of your ultimate strategies, even if you don't move forward. I think regularly
Agree.
asking the question of who are we working with in the community? Is it working well? Are there new or creative ways that we can work with others in the community? I think that's just a habit of a healthy nonprofit. And I think it's a sign of a confident and authentic leader.
Agreed. I cannot agree more. Like I know that most organizations make lists of the partnerships that they have, and they're proud to brag about who they work with. I mean, if that is such your focus and it's such a proud part of who you are as an organization, then just taking each of those to the next level to help just really further your mission makes complete sense. Making sure your board knows about it as you go along too. Well, thank you for
Absolutely.
joining me, Greg. As always, it was fun. We train on this topic, but to get to talk about it and to pick your brain on a practical level has been really, really fun for me, and always enjoy spending time with you.
That's awesome, Jenny. It's great to see you as always. Stay safe and stay well. And I hope everybody listening to this stays safe and stays well as well.
Thank you, Greg. Have a good day.
Bye bye.